Call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting of Wednesday, October 24th, 2012 to order. The next item is approval of the committee minutes from September 26th.
Second.
Okay. Any comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Number 3 is the consideration of a resolution 2012-57 adopting an alternative payments acceptance policy and procedure.
This is something we've talked a little bit about, but we have not brought this policy to you in a fully fleshed out written form. So this is a first draft to go over with you and something that looks at our methods and approach to taking different payments. We want to be as convenient to our customers as we can, to our citizens as we can, but also want to recognize the different types of payments and different types of things we have to work with. So Steve spent a good amount of time thinking through this. This is a kind of a first cut at it, and we want to walk you through that policy, get your feedback, and see where we want to go from there. So Steve, take it away.
Yes, thank you very much. We've made a lot of inroads as far as accepting payments in different forms. That makes it much more convenient for our customers. We've seen a lot of activity, particularly in our utility bills. Over 85% of our utility bills are now processed electronically, and that's a significant number and really sets the mode for how we go forward. Last year, FY12, we took in $112 million that went through this office, all funds. Out of that amount, only $800,000 was paid by cash. The rest of it came through a lot of other different forms of payments. Our customers are telling us, though, that we would really like to be able to pay by credit card. We do accept credit cards for utility bills in an online mode, and about 5% of the bills were actually paid with credit cards using online. About 1,000 payments come in a month. So we've seen a lot of acceptance in that area, and fees are being paid for that. Because one of the things when you start moving toward looking to accept credit cards is inevitably there is this fee that gets borne. Unlike a retail merchant who may put those in the cost of doing business, our ability to do that is somewhat limited. We can add the fees in certain cases, but in other cases we cannot. We can accept cash discounts at the counter, but that results in different tier structures. So what we want to do is get the groundwork laid in a position so that we can end up issuing an RFP to determine exactly what this might be, if so chosen by y'all. We are accepting credit cards now. We do charge a convenience fee for those that come in across the web. We're accepting credit cards in court. $160,000 was paid last year, which is almost 20% of all the payments. That's a real plus for us. The landscape keeps changing. With the deregulation, the efforts that's going on in the banking environment, the whole card sector is changing. I didn't realize until just this week we had a conversation with a representative from a financial institution, and at that time we were reminded that, or informed that we can accept credit cards through and offer cash discounts. In other words, what ends up happening is that a fee is $100, but if you want to pay by cash, it's $97 or just whatever your transaction fee is. But then again, that reduces those fees that we have. And by issuing an RFP, we can gain the kind of interest that we need in order to determine what are these going to actually do. But until we have some idea of how to scope that, we can't issue that RFP. The rules are entirely different in terms of face-to-face transactions versus those that are done over the internet in terms of how they're going to end up accommodating that. So what we wanted to do was to lay out a policy which was laid out in broad enough terms that we could then move forward in being able to issue an RFP to be able to have something that our customers could use. So with that, I'd like to open it up to questions and
Well,
to seek.
I've got a question to start with. What doesn't incur a fee? What does not incur a fee right now?
Nothing. Everything incurs a fee of some kind. Even a cash payment incurs a fee, because we have depository fees that we actually have to pay when we put money in the bank.
Well,
They charge us to put
Yes,
cash
sir.
in the bank.
Yes, sir.
Per check.
Any business.
And I think, Mike, I think it was about $50,000 in depository fees last year. I'm catching on.
You mean in total?
But I think it was
Yeah,
something in that
total.
range, in depository fees that we paid last
and
year.
is that for cash and checks?
Primarily cash and checks, but it also included electronic payments. So for example, if a lot of our utility bills and property taxes are paid electronically, people either remit a check and it goes through a lockbox service and we pick up electronic files. We have draft transactions. We pay a fee for each of those drafts that are occurring. Or they may choose to pay their bill online using an online banking tool and push the money to us. We still pay fees in order to be able to receive that money.
Steve, is there not a fee for like so many hundreds or thousands? Because I know when, for my business, if I get, I would deposit over a certain amount per month, then I'm charged a fee. And I know that's a little different than us because we're getting a lot of checks in, a lot of payments in. So is there no threshold of an amount of money they charge us more or less?
These are volume-based. When they do their pricing schedule, and that was part of the banking arrangement that we have right now, is there is a flat amount plus a per
check.
Per check amount. And like any business, they set that up on anticipated volume, so we'll process 330,000 payments a year. And so the volume levels for us would be, I don't know what your business model is, but probably not that level.
Oh, no, I wish it were, but it's not.
But we're really a very small business in that regard, because the people who do this,
Right.
they're in the hundreds of thousands and millions of transactions that you're, but there are fees, and that's what I would like to make sure we understand, that there are fees, even if you process here, and irrespective of staff time and facilities costs associated with having that effort there.
You've got a base fee. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say then, what are the different fee amounts for each one of these? Because, I mean, for us, for me personally, I could pay this a whole bunch of different ways, and I might not necessarily want to pay it the way that we're doing right now if it would be cheaper. And if people knew that, if there's any incentive to, or not even any incentive to do that. But so, I mean, what's the relative fee? The relative
Utility
price.
bills are by far our largest driver. 260-odd thousand of the 330,000 are utility bills. And if you look at those, is that our low-cost option, and I think
Okay.
that's what you're
That's
asking,
what- yes, very
is
good. That's what I'm
automatic
putting.
bank draft.
Okay.
Without a doubt, because everything's on cruise control. The transaction costs are low. We have minimal staff time associated with processing that file, and all. But some customers feel uncomfortable with the fact that the city reaches into their bank account every month and takes some money. They authorized it, but not everybody feels comfortable with that option.
Well,
But what about like using the mailbox out? So that's what I do. I'm like, I'll go by the
Use the
day.
Dropbox?
Yes, sir.
That's one of our most expensive options.
Really? Sorry.
Yes. And the
my
reason I say
favorite.
that is that we have staff time
to
associated
walk out there and get it?
with, not just to walk out there, they have to open the envelopes, they have to then manually process that payment, no different than if you walked up to the counter.
Right. But okay, let's go old school. We've been doing it that way for years, ever. And now all of a sudden, that's the most cumbersome and cost.
It's
You know what I mean?
It's more labor intensive.
If you look at the bank as a model, what's happening to bank tellers today?
Being automated.
There
There aren't many of them.
They're being
There's maybe
automated.
one or two in a branch.
And,
a lot.
and I think that's, I would like for you to think in terms of that when you're
Let
thinking
me
about
ask
this
you-
model.
Let me ask you about, in that same vein, when we get our property tax in, doesn't it go automatically to a bank and they open it and they process it? I mean, it goes through a machine, it takes it out of the envelope and it takes, it's not touched by human hands, it goes through a machine, it takes the check over here and it has the stub and it matches it up. And if it doesn't match up, then we get it, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, how about doing something like this?
That's a
for-
lockbox process.
Right, that's
And
exactly.
we do pay a per check transaction. I'm not sure the exact, I want to say it's about a dime.
Yeah, and I'm.
But
can we not
again,
do
that's a
that?
relatively inexpensive option to do that. Not everybody pays that. We also get, for property tax, a large amount comes in through what we call, through the property tax mortgage files. And so for those people who have
that's
that
right.
taken there, again, that's processed electronically. But in this city, a lot of people own property outright, and come the end of February and the end of December, we see a significant volume of checks as people come in or drop off using the drop box in order to be able to pay their property tax bills.
Oh, using the Dropbox, rather than, but if they're mailing them, they go off to the bank, right? And the bank goes
If they
through
mail
the
it
automatic.
using the pre-addressed envelope that we provided.
Right.
But some people choose to use their own envelope and mail it directly to 109 3rd
And
Avenue
we need to
South.
educate the public. Okay.
That's interesting.
I just, one of the things and I've said this before, but I think it's important as we look at this policy, from a customer standpoint, I think our customers, our citizens, expect this to be a transaction that's more like dealing with Target or Amazon
Yeah.
than the Bureau of Motor Vehicles.
Oh.
All right, we need to be more in that range where we're taking credit cards. It's more of a similar transaction, a customer transaction that they see in their day-to-day lives than something that's cumbersome, too time-consuming, and a pain. It's better for us to get through the transaction quickly, get the money, and find these solutions. Now, we've still got to work within legal requirements about what we do with things like property tax and things like impact fees. We got to look at how we get the full value recovered and how we structure certain fees and certain ways that credit cards are used. Doesn't mean we can't use them in other instruments, but we just got to look at that we are living within those requirements. And then the other player in this is how the card companies, the credit card companies, what their rules are. And they each have their own little set and foibles to them. They're not all the same, so we got to come up with a policy that to the customer, an approach to the customer seems seamless, you know, and is responsive to how they're used to doing transactions with most other entities. So I think that's what we're trying to build in here is something that gets at these different requirements that we face, but also to the customer will seem to be logical, make sense, be convenient, be user-friendly. And that's what the challenge Steve's trying to bridge here is all these different types of transactions, but something that can be useful to the customer.
What we end up with is that if you look at going forward and looking at e-solutions to be able to process this, as you said, is that, you know, there's face-to-face transactions, not just with this counter back here, but all up and down this hall, even the police department. And for us to be able to move forward with having solutions where customers can obtain permits or licenses or pay fees and all online, we've got to be able to have these kinds of payment solutions that allow that to happen. And this is a big way to make that happen.
If I get online and I pay a bill, which I pay most all my bills online, if I get online and I pay a bank draft, okay, an automatic bank draft every month, okay, that's one thing. But if I get on and pay, like, you know, I'm trying to think of one, Mallory Valley or something, I've talked to some of them before, and if you pay, they will accept an automatic bank draft comes out every month, and they won't charge me anything for it. But if I want to pay by credit card, they're going to charge me. If I'm going to pay, and the other thing I wanted to get on and do, which I do a lot of times, I go to the site of the company, pick one, Discover Card, my insurance, USA Insurance, household insurance, and things of that nature, and auto insurance. I can go directly to that site, type in my password, get in, pay my bill, boom, it's done. They don't charge me a cent for that because I have them withdraw it from my checking account. But I have my checking account information in there, they withdraw it, I am not charged. But if I do, like Mallory Valley, if I do the automatic withdrawal, where it's hands off, I just do it automatically, and then they take it out every month, which I've gotten burned once with that, so I'm sort of with some of the people that said, no, we don't want to do that. But they're going to charge me for that, but yet they won't charge, but how are we going to do that? Do we have to charge if we allow somebody to go into our site, type in the information, put their bank, a routing number and their checking account number, and pay it, and it automatically comes right out of our bank account right to the city? Do we charge for that? Would we charge for that?
What you talked about was different payment channels in order to be able to make that payment. The option where you go, when you set up, where you pre-authorize that transaction through authorization for Mallory Valley to draft your account each month, what that does is says they're going to go out, they're going to issue you a bill, you're going to get that, you're going to have an opportunity to respond, and assuming no response, they will draft that amount, and there's no fee charged you. Mallory Valley will pay a fee to their bank in order to process that transaction. Okay. And that's included as part of their administrative costs associated with doing business just like we do. If you go online to the Mallory Valley site and you make that payment by your credit card and it's a spot transaction, and that's what we're talking about in some of these things, is there is a fee, and that fee, up to 3 or 4%, whatever the number is paid by typically by the person making the payment. So you do pay it in those cases.
But there was a difference. You said go in and they do automatic. If you sign up for automatic, it's going to be done automatically. In other words, you said that you have a chance to respond, but if they don't hear from you, they're going to automatically take it out every month. The other scenario was for me to go online to that site every month and put my routing number in there. Boom,
Well, you
boom,
put
boom.
in once and then they save it.
And, yeah, they can save it, usually.
And you opt to pay by your
And then I
check.
pay it every month because they're not automatically going to take it out. How does that work here? Would that also cost us to do it?
Yes, ma'am, it costs us. And what that is
costs
that's
us
when
more.
you go through your bank tool.
Right.
And you go into your bank account and you actually push the money from your bank account
Exactly.
into Mallory Valley's. Your bank does not charge you a fee, but Mallory Valley's bank charges a fee in order to receive those payments. That's part of those depository
That's why they
fees that we
might charge.
talked about to begin with. So there is, again, administrative costs associated with accepting those payments. You may not see it directly, and it's all part of Mallory's, administrative costs.
Are they all over the board, these different costs? I mean,
Yeah, that-
the push, the pull, everything else?
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe that's what we need to
That's
learn
what we
about.
need
I
to
think.
I'd like to know.
Alderman
if
Skinner
I've
wants
got
to
a
say something.
7-page summary of probably about a 70-page document that MasterCard would provide on what those fee structures, because it varies based on what kind of business you're in, what your lines are, what kind of card you have. You may have a Visa reward card issued by Chase. You have a Visa issued by BOA. You have a Visa issued by I don't know who, and all of them have different rates that are being charged and embedded into that process. I can provide you some additional information if you'd like.
Well, I think Alderman Skinner
So
wants to say something
I
now.
just wanted to weigh in on that. Yes, we do what Eric said about we do need to be responsive to our customers and make it as easy as possible, but then we need to also look at what kind of loss in revenue if we have additional fees. And I think so you think if we put an RFP out with these parameters, that we'll get a broad enough range of responses with the amount of money?
We think we'll get the best proposals possible if we do that, because what we'll do is we'll set up some flexibility. One of the questions I thought you would ask is, why are we bringing this to you? Why don't you guys just
Well, no, I mean.
decide this administratively? And the reason, again, is because each of the categories has some restrictions, if you will. The court fees that we can collect, we can take credit cards, but the state has some rules about what we can do. Steve's already mentioned the card companies have rules for each and every one of them. You know, the state originally wouldn't even allow us to take credit cards for property tax unless we passed along the cost to the customer, because you had the issue of fairness in the taxes. And even though they've repealed those restrictions now, most people have still continued to honor them, because you don't want to reward people who have good credit and can get airline miles for paying a big property tax bill, and then push the cost
I'm
down
sorry,
to the
what
people
big
who
deal?
can't. Well,
I mean, not that I do it, not that I do it.
it's more about the purity of the process than anything else. But on the things that we do that are very business-like, like the utilities, you know, yard sale permits, renting kiosk in the park, a lot of the other things that we do, permits, it seems to make sense for us to absorb all or part of the cost. And what we'd like to do is to have a framework where we can work with the card companies, we can work with our customers, and try to find the optimum solution for that. And I think if we leave ourselves some flexibility as far as how we do this, which Steve has put in this particular policy, we'll probably get better proposals from the card companies and the bank handlers of this processing, which will help everyone. It'll reduce the cost for us, and it'll reduce the cost for the customer when the customer's involved.
And what you ultimately end up doing is you set a pathway in terms of how you're going to handle this, and that gets factored into your cost of doing business. I mean, that's the reality of what the gas station does, or the retail store that you go to that you use your card in. That card is built into the cost. That cost of using that card is built into that price. That's essentially what we ultimately end up doing, because it's part of the transaction, just like having the staff available in our customer service area to take a utility bill is built into that cost too. So it really kind of gets to be part of the whole process and our whole interaction. We want to make it as seamless and easy as we can for our customers. We have some unique considerations we have to do with taxes and some of the other elements that we want to factor in, but the more we can have kind of the rules of the road laid out for our bidders, the better deal we think we'll get. So.
What kind of term will these things be in? Will they be renegotiated annually, or?
Oh, what, the service contract? Typically, we do 1 year with 3 or 4 one-year options, so that if the earth moves, if things change to a great extent, we have the right to bail out.
But you can continue on if
But
you're
we can
satisfied.
continue
We wouldn't
on.
go beyond 5 years. At the very outside, I think you'd be looking at 3 to 5 years generally.
And I want to underline the greatest expense we have now is not the card fee, it's the cost of handling. When every time we make a single check deposit, we get dinged for 3 cents or 5 cents or whatever it is. One of the advantages of pushing more of this to electronic payments, be they credit cards online, across the counter, whatever, is that those payments are consolidated. So when you go to the bank to make a deposit, it's one deposit and you get dinged one time, and not for every single check that you've put in your deposit. So, the more consolidation, the more streamlined this becomes, the less cost there is when you make the deposit. But you have to also remember that every time that someone in revenue is taking a check, someone in finance is going behind it and auditing that and reconciling the bank statement. And then we're paying auditors to come in and check our reconciliation. So every time you have a transaction, 3 people are looking at it. So the more consolidation and the more streamlined we can become, the more cost-effective and the less cost that we pass on to our customers.
Well, maybe I should ask, what is the goal of the RFP? It is to get some give and take with the card companies? I mean, I'm really asking, I really want to know
Right.
specifically, what are we aiming to do here? And also, how much money are we talking about? I mean, is this, I don't have any idea, and I couldn't tell from any of this, how much, and very honestly, a lot of this is maybe just the cost of doing business.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Something
but let me say this, whenever you're talking about 3 cents for a deposit, but you're talking about a 2 or 3 or 4% fee on a credit card, there's a huge difference there.
Well, but that's the fee. That's not the total cost of the
Oh, I understand. No, I
transaction.
understand
That's not the clerk standing at the counter doing the receipt. That's not the person in finance that's doing the bank reconciliation at the end of the month. You know, that's what I was trying to stress, is that there is a lot of cost behind the scene in addition to simply that bank fee. But to give you a picture of where we are, we abandoned what they call merchant card services 4 or 5 years ago. And we did an RFP and selected a vendor who takes all of these credit cards, be they Visa or MasterCard or Discover or Amex or Diners Club, and consolidates all of this for us. They do all of the online payments. That's the type of vendor that we're looking at. This vendor was not a banking service. This actually happened to be a firm that did vital records for the state of Tennessee at the time. And it was a local firm in terms that they were cited in the state. All of the banks now have caught on to this, so there's a high likelihood that we would have a bank doing this instead of a private company next time around. But either way, we want someone who will consolidate this so that we don't get a statement every month from this card company and that card company and another card company. We have one streamlined process for online payments.
Okay, now, here's another question. When you say online payments, are you talking about credit card, or are you talking about all that electronic transfer?
Yes.
Both of them? No, so, but there's a huge difference, though, in what the online, as I heard you say, on the online transfer and the credit card. Isn't there a huge difference in the fees that are being paid on those?
Not to us, to the customer there is.
Okay.
The customer, it's free if you do an electronic check.
Right, gotcha.
But there's a fee if you use a credit card, because they've got those interchange fees and so on. To us, it's virtually the same.
Okay, but as I say, to the payer, then doing the credit card is they have the fee. Is that right?
What we would propose in this is that in some circumstances, we pass along that fee. And those circumstances would be in certain areas and perhaps in city court where the state code gets involved. And on taxes, because taxes have some other issues that swirl around them. But in most everything else, utility bills and all of the miscellaneous things that we do, including some big numbers like permitting, that we absorb that cost up to a certain limit, up to a certain point.
Well, I could think for permitting, the cost would be very high if it's any percentage of what they're doing.
Well, if you...
Wait, I mean, I don't mean permits for signed permits, but you're talking about...
Well, if you exclude the impact fees, the tap fees we would exclude, the road impact fees, the facilities tax, those we would include in that tax category. But when you're talking about just a permit to renovate your house, those type of things, I think acceptance of a credit card up to a certain point would be perfectly reasonable. We may...
You'd still accept it beyond that point, but you would allocate the fee out.
That's right.
Talking different numbers, $1,000 or $2,000 transactions, something like that.
And that was what the important thing is to acknowledge that we would need some kind of reasonable cap. We would not want somebody to pay a $100,000 fee and have to absorb those. We'd want to have some reasonable cap. But we may see limits that the credit card companies would do it. There's risk in any transaction. And so what we want to do is to mitigate that risk, and we, in some risk we absorb, some risk we won't absorb. And however you structure those fees, and that's why we need those proposals to actually see what's happening in the marketplace so that we can end up best judged. And again, where our some of our real gains will end up being is we're able to automate and have these kinds of options available in an electronic environment so that our customers and citizens can then come in and conduct business with us electronically if they so choose. If they still want to deal with us in person, yes, we've got someone here to assist you. But for those who want to do it remotely, we'll be happy to, we'll work toward that.
$1,000 cap is to keep from having to pay a percentage of that could become significant if.
Yes, whether it's $1,000 or $2,000, which, and that's what we're still trying to assess on where that, threshold point might be. Two might make a lot more sense.
We've gotten some input that 2,000 might be a better.
Now, listen to this, though,
point.
that to the credit payer by credit card, if it's a 4% fee on $2,000, that's $80. Would people want to pay that, or do they
Oh,
realize?
they don't bat an eye.
Because they're pretty much financing it with a credit card anyway.
People,
Depends on the
it's
situation.
amazing. It's just, when we first did it with the utility bills, there was pushback at first, but then there became a lot more acceptance because people understood that that's what's happening out there. If they want to pay, they've got other payment options in order to do that. Yes, you can come and stand in line, but that may not be the way that some people.
Let me ask you this in terms of how you want to proceed with this. This is
Yeah,
a draft
that's right.
policy.
This is-
We
There's
can
a lot
bring
to
it
this.
back to the committee. We
Lot
can bring
to
it to the work session for the whole board to chew on it as well. We'd like to work through this policy so that we have a framework to give these bidders. That's really our interest at this point. And then that gives us a way forward to describe how we're going to do these transactions so they can structure their bids accordingly. But, we want to get your guidance. You've given us good feedback. It's good to just have the discussion with something in front of you. What's your thinking? Do you want to bring it back to the committee, bring it to the whole board as a work
Hey, I want to
session
bring it back. I
item?
don't understand it yet. I mean, I don't even have that much understanding of it yet. And how it would be divided
We're in
out.
trouble if you don't understand it.
Oh, no. I mean, I don't understand the categories, because whenever we're talking about different things, I'd like to see kind of, and maybe I'm the only person, but I want to tell you, if we're going to do this, I think we need to understand it somewhat, and I don't see how they're divided up exactly. That's the reason I was asking the question.
That's what I want.
Okay.
I want to see how they're divided up and the cost scenarios.
If you're talking about
for-
electronically, to
Yeah,
me,
how
I
much
didn't know
does
what
this
that meant,
cost?
credit
How much
card
does that cost?
online. Yeah, I didn't know
It
what
means
that
everything. We're trying to
No.
cover the whole range.
No, but I mean, to break
You're
it
basically
apart.
shopping for somebody to give us better deals, and we're going to up our opportunities for people to find different ways to pay.
Yeah, we want to have, we want to go to one vendor that'll help us do all of this. We want to have a set of rules on how we're going to deal with the different types of transactions we deal with, and what our customer sees as well as what we deal with on the backside of it, the back office side, in terms of getting payment.
Well, I was just going to say, I'd also like to find out, what parts that you would absorb whatever the fee is on, I mean, I guess the big thing I'm seeing is the credit card fee, because that's a lot of money, in my opinion. But, we were saying, well, we wouldn't do that on taxes, we wouldn't do it on impact fees and tap fees and stuff like that. I'd kind of like to get some of that. Maybe that would help me a little bit. I don't know.
Well, mainly though, it's whatever we get in response from the RFP on what, aren't they going to send us back something like, well, for credit card it'll be XX?
We think we can
For
drive
this.
that cost down a little bit from where we are
We
now.
do.
That they'll have different categories saying what they're going to charge you and then what the bottom line is going to be.
But we're also saying, though, that there are some state laws still about which ones that you,
Well,
Absorb
the
the
state
fee?
laws affect the court fees.
Court
The credit card company rules really drive it
yeah.
more than anything else.
And so that-
The big two are MasterCard and Visa. And Visa's very obstinate about letting us pass charges along, and under what circumstances we can do that. MasterCharge is much more flexible, particularly with governmental entities. So, one quick way to cure this is just say, we're not going to take any cards except MasterCard.
Yeah, good.
And we can probably come up with a pretty good solution for you pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But I don't really think you want to do that, because
right.
you've got PayPal and Square and who knows what is around the corner in terms of different types of payment.
More options is probably true.
Yeah, Amex is
Yeah.
coming out with their own electronic thing for the telephone, so what we're trying to do is think ahead and set up the framework. So let us come back to you with a little bit more detail.
Give me kind of some categories of
Okay.
different things about, you know, which, and tell me which is which,
Yeah.
too.
Well, how many people actually walk through the door and pay cash? I mean, percentage? Is it very, very low?
We had $800,000 in cash payments last year out of $112 million.
Less than 1%.
Oh.
0.7% paying
I was
cash.
gonna say, I wouldn't think
And out of that 700.
You said cash, but what about cash and check?
Or check.
Checks about $40 million. But understand that a large part of the checks come from some very large payees, like Williamson County. Remember, those kinds of payments, the state shared taxes come through an ACH payment. That's not part of the check. But checks are clearly our large opportunity. I'd actually prepared a packet that has the details on what ends up as being charged, and I can provide y'all with a copy of that.
Okay.
And is there any way, you said maybe $2,000 would be a better cap than 1,000? Is that going to make a difference in how the responders to the RFP look at this?
Probably not.
That's
really.
really more where you want that threshold to be, and looking at the type of transactions. That's really more of a
That's more about how much
customer
we're
service,
willing to
customer.
absorb.
Yeah, what point do you say, we're no longer absorbing that cost? That's something the customer's going to pay for directly. So that's a judgment call more than anything.
And
I don't think the companies are going to care on that.
But we decide then who has to pay the certain percent fee? Is that it?
Over the
Well,
threshold.
Subject to the limits, the requirements of the card company relative to ability to pass it on. Visa is adamant that you cannot pass on fees in a face-to-face transaction. MasterCard for governmental agencies, as Russ said, is amenable to working with you. In other words, you can pass it on. MasterCard, I'm more familiar with court, but two-thirds of the payments are made by Visa. They are clearly
That's interesting.
the large
That's
payer.
interesting.
And we see the same kind of thing in the utility bills as well. So they're really the large, but again, governments do make the decision that they will only accept MasterCard, and because of that.
That's interesting. Well, learned a lot today.
So if he shares this additional information, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, well, right. I mean, you know, I want to know what does it mean if we do different things?
It
I
might be
guess.
helpful if we can provide you, for example, what's the average permit that's drawn? You know, we're going to have some that'll go up to 2,000,
And
but
that's
they'll
it.
probably be few and far between. Most of them are going to hover in $500 to $800 range, probably.
Yeah, what I'm kind of noting is a breakout of the types of transactions, maybe the average
Yeah,
level of
yes,
transaction,
yes.
and then the type and fee structure related to each of those transactions that we see now. We may not get that exact same treatment from the RFP, but at least you know the environment we're in now, and then when we get bids back, we can kind of compare that too. But it gives you at least a sense of how those work. Does that sound like a pretty good?
It does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's
But
try
it's
that.
still a user's choice. The user can bring cash, bring check, bring credit card.
Absolutely.
And the
Right.
fact that it's not long until a builder can go online and access all that permitting. It'll be calculated online while he's at home, never coming to City Hall, and he puts his credit card in and leaves. He's saved lots of time. So,
Oh, yeah.
And they have the
It's-
capacity to set up escrow accounts that they can make those payments from too.
When I
so-
see, that would make a difference too. If you've got an escrow account and you just want to do that, that would really be good business on their part.
There are, this is one of many options, but this is the most precarious option in that there's so many complexities
Okay,
to
so,
taking online payments.
so what's the downside to us? I mean, truly, what's the downside to us, period, on taking any kind of payment? I mean, where do we get hurt?
Well, we don't get hurt
Really?
except on the expense side. You
Well,
know, as more people use pure credit cards, if we made a decision to absorb all the cost, you know, our fees may exceed what we're paying now for check deposits, for example. You know, what we'd like to do is to have the flexibility to find the optimum point.
And I think we feel that if we get a comprehensive program out there to bid, we'll get a better deal in the market than we have right now. So that's the thing, if you look at where we are now versus where we'll be at the end of this, we think we'll get a more competitive deal.
We're just upgrading,
Going back
basically.
out. Because we'll have a comprehensive program, and we think some of what we have now is sort of, because of the differences among cards, et cetera, is sort of splits the difference, and sometimes that benefits us and sometimes that doesn't. And thinking if we put a more comprehensive program out there, we'll get a better bid.
Well, the
And the
thing is,
environment's a little more competitive.
whenever you say credit card, the expense for credit card could be become higher than the deposit fee, then you're indicating that we are absorbing all the credit card cost?
Our recommendation would be that we not absorb all the cost,
some.
but absorb the cost on some things where it doesn't make sense to add 3% to a $5 yard sale permit,
Right.
or a $10 kiosk rental, or even a $500 or $600 or $800 permit fee.
I have two quick ones. One is yard sales. We allow people to obtain a yard sale permit online. 1/3 of the permits that were issued in FY12 were obtained online. They paid the $3 fee in addition to the $5 fee. It's much cheaper to do that, to get into SUV and drive downtown City Hall and do that. People will do that, convenience every time. They won't do that. Now, maybe what we ought to do is to incentivize that, is yard sales are $7, and it doesn't matter how you pay it. Our big thing is to make it convenient for you. If you want to make the trip, have lunch at one of our downtown
right.
restaurants, that's a great thing. If you don't, that's okay too. We'll let you do that online. In court, like I said, 20% of the payments were made by credit card. We only spent about $4,500 last year on fees that we paid for credit cards. That's out of over $800,000 in receipts. The big advantage is I've got the
That's
money
right, you
before
got it.
they
That's
leave
right.
City Hall.
That's
We
right.
don't want them to leave us an IOU
plan.
and walk out of here. This gets the money then. You're advancing the cash. We get cash immediately. Those depository transactions, money's put in our bank account the same day. When we get, or not, if we got them today, we'd get them tomorrow. But that's huge as far as from a business standpoint. And I think our citizens and customers expect us to operate in an effective, efficient business mode.
Now, how much you said out of $800,000 of court fees, the credit card cost is what?
It cost us about $4,500 last
Okay.
year. Now, but understand that a lot of those fees, doesn't include the citizens' fees. Some of those we do accept. We don't have an online option in court, but we do allow people to call in and pay over the phone, and we do pass on the fee to them as a convenience fee. They are paying that fee.
Well, I mean,
And that's the model.
I could see a $3 fee to keep from having to come down here, but an $80 fee, I don't see that. I mean, I could go out to lunch several times on that if I wanted to come
It
down.
may not be unlimited, limited in
Well, let us get some more information to you.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, thanks. All right,
Thank
now,
you.
so let's get, and let's see, item 4, we're deferring until
We'd like to defer
next
that.
month.
We're working through a few things on amendments, and we're actually a month ahead of time in bringing this to you now, so we'll be on our normal schedule.
Okay. So item 5 is the consideration of approval for EMC archiving and retrieval solution, an e-discovery software system.
This is really kind of an update of a project we're working on, and that may have some impact in budget and how we work on some things. I'll let Fred describe where we are with this.
Yeah, this is basically a status of a situation we have with our current eDiscovery software system. System we installed back in 2008, started using 2009. It's been sold about 4 or 5 times. HP owns it now, and it's they're not doing anything with it. And they're going to let it die on the vine. They don't have a replacement product for that. So EMC is a current vendor that we've been using for about 5 years now. They're the ones that provided our DR site, and they're also the ones that we're providing when we moved to our new server environment. But SourceOne has been around for, well, SourceOne's been around for 5 years, but its predecessor that was converted into SourceOne has been on the market for about 15 years. So about 20 years total that they have on this. We've looked at about 5 different systems. We've had legal involved since they're number one user of this system. And this SourceOne actually gives them more capabilities than what we have today, in the fact that they can actually go out and pull files in, so like a Word file, Excel file, whatever, which they can't do today. But our real concern is that when we go to the next version of Exchange, which the next version will be released probably December, January, then our current eDiscovery system will not work.
Yeah.
So we're looking at if we go convert over to SourceOne, and we would convert the data from NearPoint to SourceOne, you're looking at probably an outlay of around $170,000.
Now, we expect we can continue on in the current arrangement through the end of the fiscal year, so this would be something we would incorporate in the new budget, but wanted you to be aware of this issue and something we're working on that does have some cost implications, and is one that just really, we probably don't have a whole lot of choice but to look for some alternatives given where we are. But I believe it's fair to say we can work through with what we've got through the balance of this fiscal year, and then we'll need to move fairly quickly.
Maybe, maybe not, but when we want to go to the next version of Exchange, which there's advantages to doing that, then this system doesn't work anymore. And there is no upgrades to this system. They will do patch fixes, but a real concern is if this system stops and we can't get service on it, even though we paid maintenance on it. It's taken us about 2 days to get somebody to call us back now when we have an issue. And then legal's not able to do their thing. So we may have to do, if we have to start making the switch fairly soon, then we may look at some kind of creative financing for a while until we can get to next year's budget. So
And what
they'll work with us.
do we have any idea about an annual fee, annual cost after that?
Yeah.
The annual, it would run about, we're paying $16,000 a year for maintenance on NearPoint. The fee for SourceOne for the first year is no charge. It's in the $170.
Right.
Second year, 2000 calendar, let's say 2014, it would, it's estimated around $15,000. It's a little bit cheaper than that. So.
10 to 15%.
But the main
is
thing would
usually-
be the upfront to make the conversion.
Throw that up front.
The big cost in the 170 is the conversion of this system over into the other. The way the system is created, it's very complicated. You can't, we're an SQL shop, and it's not really written in SQL. So SourceOne would be, so that conversion process is pretty detailed. It's something we can't do, and I don't think we would want to do it. And it does behoove us to take NearPoint and convert it over. I mean, we could just start SourceOne tomorrow, if it was here and loaded, and then leave NearPoint where it was, but then you're working in 2 systems.
Yeah.
And we keep the data for about 2 years. So.
Any questions, or do we want to just have a motion, or?
I just, you said this other, the previous company to what NearPoint is 15 years old. And I guess the fact that HP had acquired what we're using now and is kind of letting it die on the vine, that the size of the company that's offering this really doesn't have anything to do with predictability as far as how
Well,
far out you can use it? or-
HP's been through turmoil
I know.
for the better part of 5 years now. The EMC, it surprised me when we really did the research on it, is the 5th largest computer company behind Microsoft, Oracle,
That's interesting.
SAP, and one other, or who am I leaving out? Oracle.
Yeah.
EMC is the next largest, but they make all the big servers, the storage equipment.
I used
They're
EMC
huge.
25 years ago.
Yeah. So we feel better in that this product that we're looking at has a home with a large sponsor.
Okay.
Now, we've actually quit buying HP gear. So we're buying Lenovo right now, which is an offshoot of IBM. But that's a sidebar. But the issue with HP is not a good issue, so.
I don't think we need a specific action at this point,
Just
except for
to
just to
let
keep
you know
you
that-
informed.
Okay,
There may
okay.
be action required prior to the end of the fiscal year. We may be able to kind of bridge it into the new fiscal year, but we wanted you to be aware of it because it does have some potential significant cost impact, and it's a system change, but
Okay.
an important issue for us.
Yep, if it breaks and it can't be repaired, I'll be sitting in front of you.
This is a minor detail, but are there parameters on when you have a maintenance agreement that what they agree that they're going to provide?
Oh, sure.
So,
But if you won't answer the phone, what do you do? The intent in the acquisition of this company by HP was to set up a subsidiary, which is not really HP.
Not HP, yeah.
So if you call HP for support, they'll say near what? So we are actually calling previous company that we bought the product through to get us a phone number of somebody who used to work on this system
Oh, dear.
to help us out.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
had we not paid the 16, we would have no recourse there. But eventually, we will get somebody from the other company. But what HP did, as soon as they acquired this company, they terminated the CEO of Nearpoint. So, there you go, from that. But just a little background on Nearpoint, the gentleman that wrote this software, and he lives on Mimosa Street, so that's why it's called Mimosa in California, but he's written no less than 10 packages that gets them up to a point and sells them. So HP saw a good product. Actually, the Iron Mountain, which is, they're called Iron Mountain because they're in a cave in Pennsylvania. They are a records retention company, and they actually, back in the days, they would take your hard copies and keep them forever in an environment that was, yeah, in a mountain. It's in a mountain, true, Iron Mountain. But it's just that with HP's turmoil, it didn't work out. So
So
we paid
really,
the price.
we don't have any, this is just information?
Information
Just in
Okay,
case.
okay.
Just
Okay,
in
great.
case. Thank you.
Okay, then, item 6 is the update on the Bi-County waste disposal and hauling.
Ask Becky Coldo to come up and talk to you. As you know, July 1, we made a transition in terms of how we were handling solid waste disposal and the landfill contract and the hauling arrangement, and wanted to give you a report back a couple months in terms of how we're tracking and where we are with that, and I'll let Becky take you through it.
First of all, I want to remind you that the first goal was that we would get long-term landfill space, and we got that, so we're pretty proud to have that. Overall, the picture is pretty well. I'll ask Vicki to pull up the spreadsheet, please, ma'am. I'll go ahead and tell you that we did have 4 employees we were concerned about. One of those gentlemen retired after 42 years of service with the city, and then the other 3 have actually transferred into our collection division. So they transferred into the same department, working with the same folks, just doing a different type of job for the same pay and the same benefits. I know that was an important question.
And we were talking just today about some of those things, and a couple of those folks are training on additional pieces of equipment so they can be more flexible and do more different jobs. So that's part of what we've been doing, is integrating them into that division and the way they operate, but also trying to use the skills they have as capable drivers in some of these other pieces of equipment so that they can be more flexible and help us in different ways. And the various things that disposal needs, so.
And
Or
it's
collections needs, I'm sorry.
And it's two very different operations, although they do directly affect each other. So they had to kind of see what we really did in that division, because that's somewhere they had not worked before. Looking at the spreadsheet that we had distributed to you all, the first several items are associated with personnel. So looking at those, you can see that those, after 6 payrolls or 2 months of time, have decreased for the most part. You will also see in the landfill and biosolids management line, the increase, which we did expect, just simply because it is a little more for just the landfill tip fee. The vehicle and equipment parts and maintenance is down $29,000. And then the fuel is huge, it's $48,600. So what you're seeing overall is a snapshot. I'll explain to you the fourth column. Some of these numbers came from the end of the second month. Some of them came from the end of the first month of this year. So what you're looking at in 2012 is exactly the same time frame or the same time period as is in 2013. So we're comparing apples to apples there. And we provided you with the amount of time included so that you knew, is it just July, is it July and August, or is it through, so many payrolls. So you can see that over the first, give or take 6 or 8 weeks, we've actually saved $150,683. So that puts us on target to save a bit more than we initially projected.
Because this 551,000 was on an annual basis?
That was on an annual basis, and that did include a road tractor and trailer, which we don't expect to need to replace now, which was approximately about $250,000 of that. So we're on target to save much more than we originally anticipated. I will let you know that the service is excellent. The first week, we did help with 11 loads of the 55 that they hauled. We hauled the majority of those to their landfill, simply while they waited for equipment delivery. They've managed through some pretty major accidents on the interstate, not them, but the traffic backup from some pretty major accidents on the interstate. They've managed through a couple of really bad rainstorms, wind, some weather-related things, and they've been right there to answer the call. And we talk to those folks at least once, if not 2 or 3 times a day.
And following that first week of the transition, we've not had to
No, sir.
do any more delivery ourselves in terms of driving. So that was really a transition period, and as Becky said, it related to them having the full complement of equipment. And there was just a little delay in that. And once we got through that first week, they've been able to handle everything we've sent their way.
So is Bi-County pretty happy with this too? Sometimes when you get down in the details of things, that
Yes.
you expect one thing and
I've made it
So
a
they're
point, I've made it a point to call them every couple of weeks, whether it's Pete Reed, who's the director, or Rob Dunn, who's the assistant director, or Jim Cajun, who's the operations person. I've touched base with all 3 of those gentlemen just to say, hey, I'm reaching out to you to say, how are things going on your end? How do you feel like things are going on your end when your folks get here, and vice versa? And they're doing some of the things we had done over time in terms of, do we want to work 4 10-hour days and shift people to different days? How do we decrease the overtime on our end? What time is best to get there based on traffic? Hedging for fuel, those types of things that they're looking at, that we've kind of given them that, just the little hint of, you might want to look at this, or this is something that may work for you. They've been real receptive to that, and we've worked well together.
Well, does this need any action? I mean, do we send it
It's
on?
really just a report. We wanted to show that we were checking in on where we are at this point. We'll continue to do this at different benchmarks throughout the year and beyond, just to show how we're doing, because we had an expectation, wanted to show how we're doing against those expectations.
Absolutely.
I guess another connected question. Are we still having talks or discussions about a future regional landfill? Or is this kind of?
No, that's really, TDEC has taken that up to try to work within the region and the multiple counties and communities involved. Those groups have met several times. TDEC sort of took a break to bring that group back together. I think they're going to look to do that
After the first of the year.
Yeah, that's still alive. There's the sense of urgency for us immediately isn't there, but the need for a longer-term regional approach is still absolutely the right thing to do. So those conversations need to continue. and we're going to be fully participating in that. TDEC has taken more of a lead role, though, in facilitating that, because that's really what they should be doing as part of their responsibilities, too.
And their goal overall at the last conversation we had was to choose which cities or which counties and basically to reach out to each in a certain area, Middle Tennessee specifically, and say, are you interested, are you not interested, should you be at the table, should you, what are your thoughts on the topic? And that gives them some time to really get some feedback on it.
Good.
Thank you. Item 7 is review of street aid.
This item requires no action. It's essentially, I guess, what we did in September is we brought the hotel motel tax fund to the committee to kind of go over some of the funds that you see in the budget and the annual report. So what we thought we would do this month is to go over the state street aid fund. And one thing that's unique about this fund is it's actually required by the state for us to have it, unless you get permission to roll it into your general fund. And we actually have that permission, but we just never implemented it. And the fund itself is funded by the state shared gasoline taxes, and its uses are actually restricted by the state as well. So when you actually see the annual report, that's how come you'll see it actually in a restricted category rather than a non-restricted category. In recent years, the city has designated the fund to be used for the annual paving program. And in the past, we've actually used it for actual street projects as well as traffic signals. In 2012, a lot of times what may happen is the general fund needs to have a subsidy to this fund, but in 2012, the gasoline taxes actually exceeded the expenditures by $16,000. So instead of having a zero fund balance, it actually had $16,000 at the end of the year, and that's what you see on the schedule. In 2013, we have $2 million budgeted for paving and sidewalk maintenance, and to actually get to that level, there's $400,000 that is budgeted to be transferred from the general fund to the street aid fund. So that is actually what you see in the 2013 column. A few years ago, though, the city actually had came up with a 12-year street maintenance program, a paving program, and that funding level that would require is much closer to $3 million. So the thing is, even as we look at what we have in 2013's budget, we're still below having that 12-year cycle. And if you go beyond, I guess, 13, what we try to do is just project potentially using 2013's numbers as to essentially what we might have in those years, presuming there would continue to possibly be a transfer from the general fund. So there's no action required on this item. It just may be if you have any questions or comments.
So the sidewalk maintenance is really going out and replace, where the sidewalk's buckled or cracked or whatever. It's no
new
significant
sidewalk.
It's really a
project.
repair of existing.
And it's usually done, if I may, in conjunction with repaving. In other words, if they're going to resurface
Look
the
at the whole
street and there's broken
neighborhood.
sidewalks, while they're doing that, we fix the sidewalk at the same time.
I do want to say, though, that sometime kind of recently, we came up with the 12-year cycle. It is my understanding that we had never had that before, because I have lived places for more than 20 years that have never been repaved, that had never been repaved. So there's really this 12-year cycle that we came up with, and then we've gotten kind of off again, only was in existence for maybe a year or two.
Right, that's been around a couple of years, and that's something I asked Joe York to do and his team to do, is
Absolutely.
give us a systematic approach to this. I want to kind of see how these pieces fit together and what we work with, and the 12-year is probably a somewhat idealized
It is.
version of it,
That's
but it was
not realistic.
Joe and his team's best shot at
Sure,
what we
sure.
would like to do if we could do it.
Sure.
And so what we try to do is work with the balance of the reality of what we have dollars for and what's available, and the reality is you probably end up doing certain more heavily used roads more frequently, and lesser used, more neighborhood streets are a longer time frame. So I think that's more of our reality. What we've tried to do is felt that the gas tax itself, the portion we get, is probably not sufficient to do the work that we think is necessary in our community over the long haul. We've added some, what we could take in the budget. The prior 2 years, we didn't add any. We just lived with what we got from the gas tax. We were able to put some in this time, and I think basically what Mike has done is just put a slight inflationary increase in that number in those out years. It is a judgment call and a service level call about what we want to be and how we want to do these streets. Our streets department will do the very best job with the dollars we have and allocate them based on a systematic approach, but those dollars will go as far as they will, and then we'll just pick it up the next year. And that cycle and this funding ballpark is probably a 17, 18-year cycle, is a guesstimate. His full funding, it depended on the year, was somewhere between 2.8 and 3.2 million. It sort of depended on the nature of those streets, and he kind of picks the logical breaking point to stop a group of projects. So that's, I guess, the ideal versus our reality. We're glad we were able to put some in from the general fund to get a little more work done. We're going to have to just keep looking at it every year as we go forward.
And we also have the new machine, too.
Yes.
Which really is quite good. I don't know, I mean.
We think that has some promise to help extend the life of
Yes.
certain areas and certain streets, because it is pretty effective. We're doing literally 4 times more work out of it than we were able to do before. And it is able to do longer patches that we think can help some areas. It's not an answer to everything, but it should help in certain areas, especially neighborhood streets. When we start to see those areas that are problematic, if we can get in there on a timely basis and get those fixed, that keeps that from getting worse. And the thing is, too, we can use that throughout the year. We don't have a down period where we can't do any street repairs. We can do it all year round.
That's very good.
I think I've also heard Joe say that it's not always the length of the time that something's been put down.
I understand
It's the
that.
quality of the asphalt.
That's right.
It's the quality of the asphalt.
Yeah, it's been, it fluctuates over time, and there's some that are in great shape that are maybe 18 years old, and there are others that maybe 10 years that need it more. It just depends on what we had and the quality of what was put down at that time.
The other thing I would point out that Joe never fails to remind me of is we've added a lot of lane miles to
Yes,
our
indeed.
inventory. We've built some nice, wide streets, and lots of them, in the last 5 or 10 years. And although they're still good, they are getting old. If you've been out on Carruthers,
The time will come.
you see where they're milling it up. That is not an inexpensive project. That eats up a lot of his budget when he does a stretch like that, where you've got a 4-lane footprint and you're doing
Right.
that. So, we've got Carruthers, we've got Cool Springs. There's a lot of roads that are going to require maintenance in the future.
Yeah, somebody called me, asked me about Carruthers the other day there by the Marriott. They said, why are we resurfacing that road? It looked perfectly fine.
Had some bad spots
It was
in
in
it.
And I said,
Yeah.
well, I'm sure I would agree with that, but there, on Columbia Avenue, when you get up to, if you're going out of town, and you get to Matt Catcher and you're at the light there, I think they just fixed that, if I'm not mistaken. But what causes that ripple effect where it builds up and your tires go and you're like this?
The heavy trucks.
Heavy trucks.
stopping on the asphalt.
Kind of the rutting that happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had
trucks.
somebody who was an engineer, actually, the man has passed away now, but he said there's some things that we could do to prevent that. And I said, well, I really, didn't know about it, but I said I'd suggest it. I think I did talk to Joe about it one time, but he said,
That's State Road right
we're
there.
getting more, yeah.
That's not ours.
right.
That's a good
We're
point.
getting more of that. We have it around town in different places on city roads, so.
We are looking at some techniques to repair that, and in fact, the infrared
more
truck
of
is one of the things we're looking
Yeah,
at,
that
is
might be
how we
helpful.
use that in conjunction with some other
Yeah.
techniques to try to address those kind of areas. We have them right downtown.
If you remember
It's
Oh,
been
yeah.
historically an
Right,
issue
yeah.
on Main Street. So we've got some other areas that we're looking at. And, Joe and his crews, they keep trying to find different ways to make it work. And we've given them a few more tools and a few more dollars here to try to do it.
Jerk your wheels around.
In the worst cases, like Downs Boulevard, if you notice, he's gone back and put down white topping and concrete in the areas where the trucks come to a stop, and that weight just
Oh, that's
sits on that
interesting.
asphalt.
That's interesting.
So at Columbia and at West Main, there's now concrete where we used to have asphalt in the very worst situations, but you can't do that everywhere.
Royal Oaks Hill used to be really bad. But I think it's been repaired, so.
That was one of our areas.
I guess one thought would be that, considering that we are adding more lanes and roads that we're responsible for, would there be a way, instead of just putting an arbitrary increase each year, that somehow base it over how many more miles of road or whatever?
It would be interesting to track what we spend based on the miles that are out there. The problem is, it's not just miles, it's the age of those miles. So that's where, you know, we've been able to coast a little bit, if that's probably the wrong word to use, because the roads, so many roads, so many heavily trafficked roads have been fairly new.
That's right.
You know, they've been built in the last 10 years, but now it's been 10 years.
We could definitely look at some of that. We have an inflation factor here, but we could look at some kind of formula that looked at lane miles over time and did sort of a step function out there. I mean, that's part of the beauty of doing multi-year planning, is we can kind of look at those kind of things and say, you know, a flat dollar amount is not maintaining, it's really losing ground if we're adding to the inventory at a certain rate. So we could almost build something in there, talk to Joe about that when he submits his budget, and one of the things we're asking departments to do, as you noticed, is do a multi-year outlook. They're not just doing the immediate budget, they're doing multi-years out, and we could ask him to take a shot at some kind of approach that would get at something like that, at least give you something from a planning perspective.
Right.
And that's really part of the reason why we want to bring these, what we call small funds to you. You know, they don't get the attention during the budget process because we're so focused on the general fund. But any ideas that you have in terms of what we can give you to better understand these small restricted funds, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, no action on this either, I guess. On the monthly reports, we've gotten some of this information already. The only thing I would say is that on number 6, on that investment report, if we could maybe have some kind of a small summary about that.
Oh, okay.
Next time or something. That was,
Sure.
You know, I just kind of turned through the pages and that's all. But I don't know if there's any question about any of the others there. I was glad to
I was so glad to see we're making money on the.
On the conference center? Yeah, I thought that. Thank you. Okay. Any other, but I noticed that too, thank you. Any other comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, now, we also understand that next month, though, we may be,
Yeah, that's the bad news. Today was a little bit on the light side, but we'll make up for it next month. Well, the auditors, even as late as this morning, have promised us that they'll have the fiscal 12 report ready.
okay.
So, you know, we believe that when we actually see it, so. But they understand we're not going to meet in December, so they're really
Right, so
targeting
really-
November 28th to bring that to you, and with all of the various reports that they do. And that will include the conference center report as well.
Okay.
That'll be November 28th,
Correct.
did you say?
Okay, anything else?
Do we need to meet earlier or still at 4? Or
Four is good.
4's good?
I think 4's okay. We'll just allow enough time in the meeting to work on the
Bring a
audit.
sandwich.
All right.
Okay, well, let's see.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, there's a second for that.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Always.
Okay, we're adjourned.